After 2 years of fighting in Ethiopia, warring parties have agreed to lay down their arms. That's all thanks to a peace deal brokered by the African Union. The conflict in the northern Tigray region has left thousands dead, millions displaced, and brought famine to the region. Here's what we know about the deal. Ethiopia's government and Tigrayan authorities agreed to an orderly, smooth, and coordinated disarmament. Also agreed to restoration of law and order and restoration of services. But most importantly, for the people there in the region to get unhindered access to humanitarian supplies. Now, many wonder if the peace deal will hold. We'll explore that in a moment. But first, let's look at how we got here.
The signing of this peace deal has been long awaited. On Wednesday, the Ethiopian government and regional forces of Tigray finally put ink to paper, bringing to rest a conflict that began in 2020.
The cost of this war has been too high. A lot of blood has been spilt. Property destroyed. Enough.
The conflict in Tigray region began due to tensions between Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and the local government in Tigray. Ethiopia was ruled for 3 decades by the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF. But when Ahmed came to power, he formed a coalition that left out TPLF members. TPLF blamed him for centralizing power. Ahmed denied the accusation. That resentment turned to revolt after the government cut TPLF's funding and other disagreements piled up. Both sides blame each other for the 2-year war that has raged and displaced more than 2.6 million people, with hundreds of thousands of deaths on both sides and hundreds of thousands facing famine. A ceasefire was declared in March 2022, but it didn't last long, and the war began again. People in Tigray are welcoming the peace deal, but they are only cautiously optimistic.
I'm happy about the peace treaty. Everyone is. But we've been living under siege and blockade for 2 years, without power, internet, and banking. Nothing has been said about when these basic services will return.
No one knows how quickly changes will come about, or if the peace that has just begun will last.
For some more analysis on this, I'm joined now by Adam Kasi Abebe, Senior Advisor for Constitution and Peace Building at the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance in The Hague, the Netherlands. So, sir, welcome to the program. An agreement has been reached to cease hostilities. Does that mean peace has returned to Ethiopia?
Certainly not. It's a necessary measure, but it's far from sufficient. So it is critical that they have gotten to this stage, but peace will require a lot of complicated measures, and it will take years.
It will take years, but we are still trying to be optimistic. The last agreement did not last. How optimistic are we that this peace deal will last?
Well, I think that the last one didn't last in the sense that all sides still maintained their strengths at that particular moment, and crucially, it was a unilateral agreement. So there was no deal as such. Each side essentially made the announced the truce. But this time it was signed under the tutorship of the African Union, with the observance of the United Nations and the United States and IGAD. There's a lot more actors involved. And the military situation on the ground also, I think, dictates it. And so there is a sense of superiority, especially on the federal side. But there's also an understanding that peace deal, a negotiated deal, is necessary to end it. And so it is different. There's no guarantee that it will stick, but it's certainly different, and I think more hopeful.
Okay. Now, there were a lot of issues, misunderstandings here and there that led to the war in the first place. Has this deal resolved the issues that caused the war?
No, it does not resolve them, but it provides a framework for their resolution. So if you look at the deal in detail, it provides for a lot of negotiated outcomes for some of the key issues, including the representation of Tigray in the center, the kind of interim administration that has to be established, and crucially also for the resolution of the contested lands between Amhara and Tigray regions. And so it's necessary, as I said, but it's not sufficient. It provides a framework, a necessary framework, and if the parties take advantage of them, I think they have the best chance to arrive at a negotiated, sustainable solution that will not only end this war, but also crucially end future wars, prevent future wars as well.
So, what are the next steps to take after striking this deal?
A number of measures. So there's a lot of agreement around cessation of hostilities, establishment of an interim arrangement, and that requires first the removal of the TPLF from the terrorism designation, which would hopefully happen quickly, because that is necessary for formal deals, formal negotiations to happen. And of course, also process around a negotiation to solve the land issue and others. And so there's a number of measures. And the peace agreement, I must say, is quite optimistic in terms of its timelines. But I expect that given the complications, given the seriousness of the issues that will be dealt with, progress will be made. But the first step would be, in my opinion, to start the disarmament process, but also to remove the terrorism designation so that all the other measures can proceed as planned.
We're talking about a war that raged on for 2 years. A lot of people have lost their loved ones. Many have been displaced. I mean, many's lives have just been brought down massively. How does Ethiopia move on from this? How does Ethiopia reconcile with all of this?
I think that's perhaps the million-dollar question. You're right, it has been a brutal war, particularly on the civilian population. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians have died. And most importantly, the propaganda, the hate speech, and the animosity between Tigrayans and Amhara and Afars, but across the country, has been extremely worrying. And so in that sense, I think that the most fundamental job will not just be to silence the guns, but also to silence the propaganda and start essentially reversed gear and use traditional leaders, religious leaders, and public media to promote a new sense of identity, a new sense of relationship. And so it will be difficult. I think we've broken a lot of bones, we've broken a lot of minds, but it will be necessary. I think sustainable peace will require it. And in this regard, the agreement already anticipates a mechanism, a transitional justice mechanism, to lead to reconciliation, healing, truth-telling, and also as necessary accountability, and of course also as necessary compensation and redress for individual victims. And so this is an outcome of animosity, of hatred, of decades, and it will take several years before it is completely resolved.
Okay. Adam Kasi-Abebe, Senior Advisor for Constitution and Peace Building at the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance in The Hague, Netherlands. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.